Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're right at 2 o'clock, so we'll get started. With us today, my name is Vicki Robinson. I am with Lone Star Education Products and Services. And today we have Deborah McNeil is with us, and she is speaking on encouraging family enrichment. Deborah is the founder of Brain Insights Internet, and she's an international speaker and initiator of the First 60 Days movement, author of Neuro Nurturing Interaction series. We also have Patricia, oh my goodness, Patricia, I hope I don't butcher this, Witzenfeld. And her topic is improving school-home communication. She's former television journalist and former family engagement district leader, author of Closing the Loop, a powerful and practical guide to school-home communication, and Bev Schumacher. And Bev Schumacher is founder of Learning Props, Family Engagement Resources, and author of Menu for Building Family Partnerships. Former parent involvement coordinator and trainer. And with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Deb, and she will kick things off for us.
Well, welcome everyone. We're thrilled that you're here with us. You're in for a treat from three different presenters today, or well, four of us actually, um, and we're excited to share all kinds of wonderful content and supporting you in your important role. So as we go through, let me get to there we go. All right. So the title of my session is Encouraging Family Enrichment. And I'm going to be sharing this in, uh, in a way that goes through my career and my experiences and how I ended up encouraging family enrichment in the different roles that I had throughout my career. And just share that with you as to share the way that I learned along the way. So as a teacher, I started as an early childhood educator with a bachelor's degree in early childhood education and taught kindergarten. And during that time, while I was teaching kindergarten, I learned a lot about creating partnerships, a partner relationship with the families of the children that were in my class. And so one of the pieces that I learned, first of all, was the acknowledgement of them as a parent. You know, the saying, the parent is the child's first and most important teacher. So I recognize them. I acknowledge parents as that in that role. They know their child best. We know their children in a different way than they know their child. So becoming as partners, the two ways of knowing children it only supports the child when we become partners in the ways that we each know the child. So you've probably had that experience. I know I sure did, where you have a meeting with a parent or a parent teacher conference, and the child, you tell the parent about what they were seeing and all the positives you'd see about the child, and the parent would say, well, that's not what I see at home. Have you ever had that experience? I know I did, as I said. So they're seeing a different picture, and a lot of times uh, children will be on their best behavior at school, and then let it loose at home because that's a more safe place to let all of their emotions out. Other children, on the other hand, um, might be overwhelmed in a classroom, and it might be a lot for them to process and get overstimulated. So you might see a different picture of the child at school than the parent does. So that's why the importance of the partnership and exchanging information and viewpoints and tips and ideas with each other is optimal for that for and best for that child. You want to respect. I learned that you need to respect the family makeup. How that, every family is different, and respecting that family makeup, and not a big part of that is not making assumptions of who the family members are. I remember one time we were having an open house, and these two people approached me, and just like in this picture, and unless they introduce their role in that child's life, you don't know what their role is. And so I had um, opposite examples where one time I thought one person was the mother, and it turned out she was the grandmother, and I had another situation that it was just the opposite. So we need to be respectful of and conscious of not making assumptions of who who the members of a family are. And then, of course, respect the parent or the foster parent, or whoever it is that is the main provider or caretaker of that child as an individual. And then recognition of what they do also, which is aligned with the next bullet point on use of terms. So recognizing what they do. Are they a stay-at-home parent? Are they part-time? Do they work third shift? It makes a difference in how you can develop a partnership with them in recognizing what they do and the type of work that they do. You don't want to talk uh, above adult that's in that child's life. You don't want to talk above them and assume they don't know things. And you don't want to talk too simplistic to a parent. And you don't want to, use of terms, you don't want to use a lot of educational jargon that they might not understand. You want to recognize them um, in the way that they would understand it and talk with them in that way. Another aspect of use of terms is how you refer to the people in the child's home. So you don't always want to say, go home and talk to your parents. Well, it might not be a parent. Go tell your mom about this. Well, they might not have a mom, or they might have two dads. They might have uh, grandparents. So you want to be careful of the type of terms that you use. And then sharing to support learning at home. And this is the biggest thing that came out of teaching kindergarten. I had so many parents, especially in the second school district that I taught in, so many parents coming to me and saying, what can I do to help my child learn? And I would always say, well, there's learning that's taking place in everything that you're doing throughout the day. And they'd say, yeah, but how can I help them though? And I'd say, well, make learning fun in the activities that you're doing. Well, like what? What can I do? So I started writing down activity ideas that can be done in everyday life. And I was sharing those with the parents in newsletters that I would send home. And they loved it. And that really created a partnership relationship. So sharing tips and ideas, it doesn't always come easily to everyone. So, and I'm going to be referring back to this toward the end of the session. And then doing workshops. I ended up, because the parents were loving me sending those home weekly, those tips, I ended up doing workshops, and the parents would come, and it was wonderful because we didn't have to guess if the parents might come because we knew what they were interested in. So we created workshops at our school for parents to get ideas of things to do at home. Then I became a family network coordinator. I created a program that we called Family Network, and it was a community-based organization that had representation from all aspects of the community with the focus on parents, well, now see, I just did it, families being in support of their children's learning and education and overall development, all aspects of development throughout the community. So we needed to recognize the many aspects of parent involvement. And that was one of the benefits of this program that I didn't see in the design of the program initially. What that part of it was is that I was sharing information with parents, I mean, with teachers about parent involvement. Because what I found is that so many of the educators were had the focus of parent involvement, the term parent involvement, meaning a parent that came to school for concerts or performances or art fairs, or they volunteered in the school, or and attending parent-teacher conferences. So that's how most of the educators were viewing that. Well, those parents, they might say, those parents aren't very involved because they weren't attending those kinds of events at the school. But what I was able to point out to them is there's a lot more to parent involvement and support of their children's education than attending events. Attending events is wonderful, right? And if they can make it to parent-teacher conferences, that's fabulous. But there's so much more that parents are doing well, not behind the scenes, but outside the school. If they are making sure are getting fed and their physical care is taken care of, they're getting enough sleep and nutritious foods and opportunities to play and move and get outdoors, that's all positive. If they're signing forms or permission slips that are sent home, if they're reading the newsletters, those are all aspects of parent involvement and support of their children's education. And those teachers started realizing that and then acknowledging and recognizing, because there's so many varieties of situations for families, aren't there? So maybe there's there's families that are working third shift. They can't make it to those evening events. Or maybe they just have enough money to get to work throughout the week, and they don't have, just the bus money to get to work every day. And there isn't extra money to get to school for an event either. So recognizing all of that. Another thing that we did is we created an anonymous phone line that parents could call in and leave a message about something they had a question about or a concern about. And what we were able to do is from those messages on this anonymous line, it was the Family Network line, we could see were there some common issues or concerns that parents had, questions that they had. And we could see that some of them, some primary ones were concerns about children that may be ADHD. Parents were wondering, they were curious, does this mean my child is ADHD? Are these some of the symptoms? And I'd like to learn more about that. Another topic was homework. How much homework should my child at this age be having? I'm having a hard time getting them to do their homework. What are some tips for that? And what we ended up being able to do then is design, again, workshops that were on the topics that parents wanted. When we did that, we had standing room only attendance at these workshops we provided. We also created checkout boxes. So for different age groups and different classrooms. And we also had a resource center a location where people could check them out, and through the library. So they were just boxes of simple activities that could be done in everyday life while a parent is doing the laundry or making dinner. Here's an activity box that the child could do, and they could interact and talk about it while the child was using the checkout boxes. And then we had family nights. We used the junior high in this community, and we had family nights periodically throughout the year. And again, this is something to attend, an event to attend, but they were well attended. We used one area of the school and just had board games. Parents could play board games with their child, so they were not being the family wasn't interrupted. It was a time set aside to do that. And then we had teachers from the district that wanted to share their hobbies with families. So we had different hobbies being shared and taught to families in different classrooms. And it was a great event. So and it just developed some rapport with the families by doing that. And then I became a brain development specialist, and I had the opportunity to work for a advocacy agency that did presentations on early brain development. And so there were two of us that did this brain project, and we went around our state and did presentations to help anyone and everyone that we could reach. We went to health fairs, we went to conferences, and we provided our own workshops as well, and helped create the awareness of how children's brains develop. And what it does is makes a difference for parents or families to have that understanding so that they are providing what's developmentally appropriate for children and what's advantageous based on what scientific research shares. So my focus with this information is taking the neuroscience and the scientific research and simplifying it and making it practical into everyday life. And that's what this last part of this presentation is going to provide for you. So I'm going to begin by sharing this piece of information. And the idea in sharing this is it's information that you can then share with the parents or the family members of the children that you are working with, so that they have this basis of understanding. So in 1996, well, in the 90s is when the technology became more advanced, so that the scientists were providing information about what children actually needed. So it became referred to as the decade of the brain. The 90s was the decade of the brain when this information was more advanced and becoming more popular. So Newsweek magazine decided to do a special issue in 1996 on early brain development. And in that issue, it stated, early childhood experiences exert a dramatic and precise impact, physically determining how the intricate neural circuits of the brain are wired. Now, Newsweek magazine wanted this to become common knowledge, but they worded it this way. And so that's kind of what I'm saying is I try to word it very simple and understandable. So really all that this quote is saying is it's the early childhood experiences that physically grows and develops a brain. So, we need to help parents realize that that whatever experiences they're providing for their child is helping to develop that brain. They are learning and making pathways in their brain and physically growing their brain for skills and abilities that they'll use throughout life. So I created a term to talk about this because sometimes the term brain development may sound too complicated. The parents might, not be interested in, oh, you're going to talk about brain development? I don't want to hear about that. That sounds too technical. So that's one issue with that term. The other issue with the term brain development sometimes is that people think it's only brain development is only about helping to make their child smart or intelligence building or acquiring knowledge, right? Sometimes it's thought of only in that way, but really developing a brain well is about all the overall development of all of who a child is. So I decided maybe we need a different term to talk about brain development. So I created the term neuronurturing. And when I developed that term, I thought, well, now we need to know. People are going to ask, well, what is neural nurturing? And I realized that whenever I was doing presentations, I was explaining that brain development doesn't have to be so complicated. It can be high levels of neuroscience, certainly, right? But to provide what children need most for healthy overall optimal development, it's meeting the physical needs, providing security, providing nurturing, and an abundance of play. So that's what this representation is. That's my neural nurturing model. And there's more to my model, but we won't have time to go into that. I broke it down into 5 aspects of each of those areas. But just for this purpose and time frame, just to think about, we need to provide for those physical needs, their security, provide responsive nurturing, and provide lots of play. So I'm going to go through each of those areas and give an activity interaction idea and a brain insight along with it. Oh, and by the way, as I became a brain development specialist, after I worked for that advocacy agency and the funding ran out for that project, I said, well, I can't not do this. The funding ran out, but my passion to get the information didn't end. So I needed to do it on my own, and I created a company called Brain Insights. And so that's share with you a few of those brain insights. So under the topic of physical needs, here's one of the activity ideas that I share in what Vicki introduced about the neural nurturing interaction series that I've created. And this one's called grocery store matching. So it suggests bring coupons for labels from a product from home. As we go through the store, have me look for a product that matches the labels or coupons. So you're doing something interactive with the child. They're having their, getting your attention. You're learning together. You're having a positive interaction. That's a learning activity. And so that's the type of thing that I shared, that I referred to at the beginning, talking about when I was teaching kindergarten and I was sharing activity ideas with parents. These are the kind of things that I provided for them. But at that time, that was before the 90s. That was early. That was in the late 70s when I was doing those. And the brain research wasn't out yet. So what I've done since is taken all those types of activities and matched them with a brain insight to give them an idea of, okay, here's what to do. Now here is what doing that activity is going to do for their brain development. So the brain insight is when I do fun interactions with you, my brain makes connections for developing and strengthening abilities. When encouraging me to be proud of the skills I am gaining, this helps me want to develop further. So one of the things that I am well known for is I've become known as the brain lady, or the lady with the styrofoam balls and the pipe cleaners. And so what I teach is that, just like that Newsweek magazine said, it's the early childhood experiences that create and grows and develops the brain, the intricate neural circuits of the brain, as they worded it. So I use this as a simulation to demonstrate that these are representations of the 86 billion, 2 of the 86 billion brain cells that a child is born with. And what happens is when we have experiences, connections are made between those brain cells, because 9 months of development isn't enough time to connect 86 billion brain cells. So the time after birth is a wonderful opportunity that we get to provide those experiences that are going to develop a brain best. So as we provide those experiences in everyday life, we are creating connections. So helping a parent realize that that's what you are doing and that's what they are doing to optimally develop the brain. And the time that the brain grows most rapidly is in the first 5 years. So it develops, continues to make connections throughout our lives, but the most rapid time of development is in those first 5 years, with the earliest days, weeks, and months developing them at a rate of 1 million per second. That's what you're doing every day with these kids. And on the topic of grocery store activities is another thing that's important and valuable to share with parents, and that is on nutrition and the brain. Often people don't think of nutrition in relation to the brain, but more so for the body. But if children have adequate amounts of protein, especially for breakfast, the brain releases serotonin, the feel-good chemicals, and children can pay attention and learn and listen and be in a better mood because they've had adequate amounts of protein that release that serotonin. If the opposite happens and a child has just simple carbohydrates for breakfast, what happens is 30 minutes later, the stress hormones are released and a child feels agitated, might be hyperactive, can't focus, can't pay attention, and it makes it difficult for them to learn. On the topic of security, this is an activity that you might not think of in relation to security, but it is called Give Me a Choice. When it's possible, give me choices throughout the day. For example, ask, do you want to wear a red shirt or the blue one? Do you want to brush your teeth first or put on your pajamas first? That's not an option that you aren't going to do one or the other. It's which the child gets to choose which one they want to do first. Or should we read that book again or a new one? And the brain insight is when I get to make choices in my day, it helps me learn that I can have an influence in my life. Making decisions reduces stress hormones releasing hormone levels influencing my brain. Hormones are released because we feel if we have a real or perceived lack of choice, it feels like stress. And that impacts our feelings of security. So I won't have time to go into the details of this, but if you look at, these are the 4 major parts of the brain that I talk about in my presentations. I only talk about these 4. And the bottom 2 are the midbrain and the brainstem that are our stress response system areas. And when the brainstem regulates our heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, and breathing, and the midbrain regulates our motor skills. So if we're feeling threatened or stressed, the focus of the brain goes down to that area so we can, and our heart rate increases, our blood pressure increases, our body temperature rises, and our motor skills kick in so we can fight or flee in a situation. So helping parents realize that's what's going on when children are feeling stressed is really helpful to them. And the cortex at the top of the brain is our learning and processing area of the brain. And that isn't it isn't accessed when a child is feeling stressed because it's down in that lower area of the stress response system. And nurturing. Show me love throughout the day, finding opportunities to create fun and loving play. Roll around on the floor together, crawl after me and tickle me after you catch me. Give me kisses and give me a kiss and smile every time you greet me, or give me a hug when I succeed or show effort at learning something new. And the brain insight is play, laughter, kisses, and hugs make the caring areas of the brain active. That's up in that cortex part of the brain. More of these experiences make these areas become stronger and help me know I am worthy of love. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to quickly share that with repetition of those positive experiences, there's something that coats the connections between brain cells to, it's called a myelin sheath, that strengthens those repeated positive experiences. It coats those connections too if it's negative experiences. So we want to provide the most positive experiences like that activity was just sharing. And the last one is exploring with objects. Provide a variety of different items for me to experiment with. It can be toys or it can be boxes, nature items, plastic containers, and things to pour, crumple, measure, squish, or pretend with. The Brain Insight is to help children develop a strong sense of self and their connection with the world. It's important to offer experiences that engage all of their senses. These experiences support the development of vital brain pathways, allowing children to explore surroundings and understanding their place in it, while also promoting overall well-being. So I won't have time to do this, but children need to play with real objects. They're not going to get the same experience from screens. So final note from the children to adults, we just want to be understood, want to feel safe, want to play, and want to be loved. That's all. And this is just a slide of information about resources that I share and my website, braininsightsonline.com. And now I'm going to turn it over to Patricia.
Wow, thank you, Deborah. That was fantastic. And honest to goodness, it's like you just queued up my entire presentation. So I also want to thank you for that. I'm getting everything ready here just so I know I've got my chat. So I am going to speak to you about how to improve communication, simplify communication to improve family engagement. And as Deborah said, sometimes as educators and experts in child development, we can talk way up here to parents and caregivers, and we need to be mindful of using language that brings them into the learning process while still being really respectful of their intelligence. So let me share my slideshow here for you. And I sometimes forget this, so I just want to let you know at the end of the presentation, get your cameras ready. I've got a QR code and a free school home communication playbook that is going to cover a lot of what we don't necessarily have time to cover today. The other thing I want to let you know is that we are going to be doing some interaction in this little workshop. So fire up your fingers, and Deborah, Vicki, and Bev, I encourage you to participate as well. Okay. You probably all know, because you're educators, that people learn best through stories. So I wanted to start with this story to give you a little bit more about my background and a little bit more about what we're going to be doing today. So there once was a little girl who dreamed of being a television news reporter. With her family supporting her, she worked really hard, studied writing and journalism, and she got to live out her dream. So there I am. Obviously, it was a very humid day if you look at my hair. And the size of the camera, I think, dates me a bit. But anywho, one day she met a young man and he was the one. And she quickly found herself with 3 children under the age of 2. I'm not kidding you. I had a 1-year-old child and then a set of twins. I was crazy. Nevertheless, she decided to go back to work helping other young girls and boys live out their dreams at the Evansville Vanderburgh School Corporation in Indiana, at the 3rd largest school district in the state, working as the executive director of family engagement and community schools. One day when she got home from work, she opened this letter, and I will let you guys read it. Right. Ooh, it's a doozy. And she thought, what? And she thought, if I don't understand this, maybe other people don't understand this. And if other people don't understand this, how can families possibly understand this? And she came to the conclusion really that before we can begin to have respectful, meaningful conversations with families, they have to understand what we're talking about. And we have to be able to approach them in a respectful partnership way. And just like that, the little girl discovered a new passion because actually the skill of a broadcast journalist, her skills are really this ability to take very complicated subjects like combined sewer overflow or tax increment financing and break those subjects down into ways that are clear and concise and informative, and break them down in ways that bring the audience into the information, that make them care. And so you didn't know it when you sat down for this part of the presentation, but you're all going to become broadcast journalists. We are going to take the principles of broadcast journalism, this idea of clear, concise, compassionate communication, and apply it to our school home communications. So I want to start by making sure we are all on the same page. We've heard a lot about what family engagement is. Deborah, you did a beautiful job at that. So I want to look at what communication is. It is the interchange of thoughts, opinions, or information. It's a two-way process of reaching mutual understanding and creating and sharing meaning. When you look at this definition, I love it because this is also what we want when we talk about family engagement. We want it to be a two-way process. We want to create a mutual understanding. We want to sit down together and build goals so that students can succeed. I love this definition. I like this one even more. What's not communication? It's not sending home a newsletter and checking that off your list. You know, there's nothing in that that's necessarily going to create that partnership that will help students succeed. It's not giving families a list of school supplies because there's nothing about that that's going to bring them into the learning process, that's going to give them something they can do at home, like Deborah just taught us. And it's not sending home a parent compact and sending that back. It's really the conversation over that compact. As educators, we are going to do this to help your child succeed. As a parent, you know, what is your role? What can you do so that together we can work so that your child can succeed? When we ask parents what family engagement is, this is what they say. It's clear as a bell. Communication is flowing between home and school. So why does communication matter? Well, as Deborah just covered, families have information and knowledge that we really need to help students succeed. You know, I've said this a million times. I am not an expert in algebra. That's why I went into broadcast journalism. But I am an expert in Benjamin Weinzapfel. I've known that child since the day he was born. So in 5th grade, when the whole 5th grade teaching team came together and they were going to try to figure out, how do we keep Benjamin on task? How do we motivate him to sit in his seat and get his work done in the classroom? They came up with this great idea. He attended a public school that required uniforms. So their idea was, if Benjamin stays on task, he can have free dress Friday. Well, Benjamin is the kind of child that could care less about what he wears. In fact, to this day, he's one of those like shorts people that just wears shorts all the time, regardless of the weather. You know what I'm talking about? And you can imagine that was not very motivating. If I had been at the table with my expertise, I would have said, when he gets done with his work in the classroom, send him down to the library or let him do his dinosaur origami, but I wasn't there. We know families have information we really need, but oftentimes we don't think about the information that we as educators have that families really want. The education world is very complicated, and even more so these days. When it came time to get all those 3 lovelies into college that you saw in the picture, I was almost unable to help because when I went to college, there was no FAFSA or Common App. Everything's changed. That's impossible for our families to keep up with. It's impossible for them to keep up with all of those changes. We're experts in academics, but as Deborah said, we are often experts in child development as well. And so if we have a mother whose middle schooler isn't moving necessarily in the direction that she thinks he should be moving, or that he was moving in, you know, that can, as a parent, that can make you feel like you're not doing a very good job. As experts in child development, educators can come along and say, you know what, that is typical middle school development. That is exactly what your child should be doing right now. He should be spreading his wings and trying to make his own way. And this is your role now. And you are doing a good job, so stick with it. That is important knowledge that families really need. Communication matters because it can really build educational equity. All parents will be able to participate in the learning process, and we need that. And I think good communication can help us create a kinder world. So I'm going to stop here for a second and ask you all, and for those of you with your camera, I'll be able to see you. Kind of raise your hand. If not, put in the chat. Have you ever been in a meeting, or you've been signing up for health insurance, or maybe renting a home or buying a home or doing something financial where you didn't understand something? Who has been in that situation? Okay. My question to you is, did you say something? Yeah, maybe. I see some head nods like this. Yeah, maybe some of us did. Some of us do, right? Maybe some of us did. But for the rest of us, why don't we say something? It's really because we don't want to seem like we're not smart, right? So I think it's important to remember as we go through the rest of the presentation that parents may not tell you if they don't understand something. And they may not tell you if they feel overwhelmed with information that they've been given. They will simply disengage, and they won't answer our phone calls. They won't come to our family nights, or worse, they will seek out information that may not be correct. And we're actually seeing a lot of that in education right now. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, fire up your fingers. Is everybody ready? Okay. What I want you to do is read the following welcome message from a school website homepage. And I want you to keep in mind the purpose of this communication. This is actually a real communication. So as a parent, I move to a city and I want to read about the school district where my child is going to go. In the chat, type the words that you think your parents might not understand. And we want to say might not, because we never want to underestimate our parents. And then type one word to describe how parents might feel reading this message. Keep in mind, it's their first exposure to the school. Okay, get the chat ready. Here you go. So one word they might not understand, and how parents might feel. Paradigm. Yes. Thank you, Tina. Capable. Instructional. Yes. The word paradigm just kind of stops you right in your tracks, right? So how would parents feel? Do they see themselves in this school? Exemplified, right? Overwhelmed. Do they feel welcomed from a family engagement standpoint? No. I'm waiting. I think the chat's a bit delayed, but so we can agree that this isn't very engaging. There's no language. It's tough for me as a parent to see that they want me there. Okay, keep that parent hat on and read this rewritten and capture your thoughts on this one in the chat. How do we feel about this one? Do we need some coffee? Yeah, more welcoming and encouraging. So if this is my first exposure to the school, I'm thinking, they want me there, right? And we flat out say, education is a partnership and you are an expert. It honors the parent. Absolutely. Thank you, Bev. 100%. So am I more likely then to come to the school for a meeting? Am I more likely to answer the phone call when the school calls? Yeah, it's friendly. And they say the same thing. We're talking about lifelong learners, and we're growing confident leaders, but we say it in a way that brings in that family engagement perspective and also simplifies the language. Okay, thank you for doing that. So why are we not always good at communicating? I'm going to take you on a very short little pictorial history. On the advice of his readers, Jeffrey decided to adopt a more formal writing style. As educators, sometimes we feel like we have to be very formal with our communications. We're educators, right? We're part of a system. But that authoritative formal approach can form a barrier when it comes to building the relationships with our families that we really want. Were there any new buzzwords created while I was out to lunch? We love our big words in education, don't we? We love them. We use them all the time. I was doing a training last week. Somebody's like, do you think we do it because we're educators and we want to sound smart? I'm like, maybe that's the case, right? But these big words can actually be really form barriers when it comes to communications. Because remember, parents may not tell us if they don't understand. And that goes for acronyms too. We'll talk about that in a second. How about this one? Woman drowns in school-related emails. We can overwhelm parents with information to the point where they don't know what's important and what's not. And I had a woman call my office one time. She was so angry because she had just finished talking to the school. Her child had missed the PSAT. So she called the school. The principal said, well, we left an automated message to let you know about the PSAT. And she was like, are you kidding me? You call when it's pajama day at the school. You call all the time. How was I to know that that message was important? So it's not just the amount of communication in each, the amount of information in each communication. It can often be the overwhelming amount of communication, period. But I think this is really the biggest reason we don't always communicate well. My last comment appeared to invite feedback. Do not be fooled. I think when we really begin to meaningfully communicate with families, it can be really scary. And it can be scary not just because we may be picking up the phone and calling someone we don't know, or having a conversation that makes us a little uncomfortable. It can be scary because if we really communicate, we may have to listen. And that means we may have to change. And change can be scary. Okay, so here are your broadcast news. Here are today's top tips for school home communication. Tip number 1, simplify your words. This is attributed to Mark Twain, and so we're just going to go with that. He said, don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do. Here are a whole bunch of $5 words. This was a brochure we were going to send home to families to explain what PBIS was. Positive behavior intervention and support, decision-making framework, evidence-based behavioral practices. Take a word like climates. Climates is not a word that our families use down at the grocery. They don't come home and say, the climate in the produce department was outrageous, right? And yet these are words that sneak their way into our school home communications. So if we're not going to use $5 words, we can translate them into 50-cent words. So what is an assessment anyway for a parent? That's a test. What is data? Information. Referral, sent to the principal's office for behavior. I didn't know what a referral was until I started working at my district. Post-secondary, that's one of my, why do we say that? Why don't we just say after high school? And then finally, guardian. Dear parent and guardian. I don't know why we do that. It sounds so legal and so formal. If we just make one little switch and say caregiver instead, number 1, it's more accurate, but number 2, it's friendlier, it's more approachable. The people who love our students and get them to school on time are not guarding them, they're caring for them. This is what it looks like. So please contact the school to request assistance. This is not a stretch. You could see us writing this. It becomes, please reach out if you need help. I'm writing to accentuate the fact that your child has been non-attendant for 5 days of school. What is that? I don't even know what that is, right? Instead, if we write it in a very simple way, we say just a note to let you know your child has missed 5 days. And we know missing 5 days is serious, right? But if we write it this way, we're more likely to then be able to have a conversation with a parent or caregiver to see what's going on. in that home and help that child get to school. Students will continue to learn test-taking strategies for reading ELA-type passages that they will see on the state test. Snapped straight from a newsletter of a school I was working with. I don't know, you get this as a parent. Are you able to help at home? Are you able to have a conversation at home? Probably not. So instead, we can say, whoops, students will continue to get ready for the state test in April by practicing their test-taking skills in reading. Okay. So just in case you don't believe me, the superintendent in our district was doing a Facebook Live about how we were going to reopen schools in the fall after COVID. And he kept talking about keeping students in cohorts. And finally, a parent said, can you explain what a cohort is? It's been mentioned many times, but some may not know what it means. So if we ask our parents, they'll tell us. But remember, we don't often ask. One thing to keep in mind, the simpler the words, the more easily they're translated and understood into other languages. If we can write in a really simple way, it's much easier to translate. And remember that an acronym is not a word. So if we're going to use an acronym, we have to define that acronym. And that is not just the words that the letters stand for, but actually the definition of the acronym. Okay, tip number 2, communicate for the ear. In broadcasting, we're always talking about communicating in the spoken word because I have one chance to get your attention. And so I need to cut through whatever you might be doing, driving, cooking, cleaning house. I want to get your attention. So for our purposes, we can think of the ear as your attention span. So the ear can only digest about 1 fact per sentence. This is basically how we speak. Anything more than this, and we start to lose our attention. The ear quits listening when it takes too much effort. I hope that's not happening to you right now, but perhaps you've been in a presentation where you're kind of start thinking, what am I having for lunch? Or you're reading something, maybe you open, you're like, I'm going to read this article. You get through 2 paragraphs and then you close it because we all have such a short attention span now. And the ear's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. We actually have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. Goldfish can hold their attention for 12 seconds. Ours is down to 8. And that's because of these are phones, which brings me to another point. The ear reads on the phone. So we sit at our desks and we compose our flyers and our emails and our text messages, and we think they look so readable. And then we have to keep in mind that our families are reading them on their phones. So I was working with a school in Atlanta, and they sent me their parent email, and I'm just going to show you. So, okay, are they still reading? Are they still reading? How about now? How about now? How about now? And the sad thing is within this was a very important invitation to the Title I meeting, but it was buried in the middle of the email and parents never saw it. She said, why didn't they come? I was like, they never read it. So when you put something together, send it to yourself and read it on your phone. When it comes to information, the best way you can kind of cull it down is to think, who's your audience? That'll immediately help you pare down your information. Think about what is the specific purpose that I'm trying to achieve with this communication. And that'll help you pare it down. And then maybe you want to fill in 2 or 3 things to kind of bolster that one little purpose to your communication. You have to get really clear. We can't give parents all the information at once. We have to dole it out in digestible pieces. So it's your turn now again, so get your fingers ready. What I want you to do is read the following description of a program to help students who didn't finish high school earn their degrees. Think about the audience, okay? These are our 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who dropped out. How do they feel about school? How do they feel about themselves? Do they have confidence? Let's sit with that for a second and think about the purpose of this little flyer blurb. It is to get them interested in this program that might allow them to finish. So that's our clear purpose. Pick out one fact that you feel is not necessary to include in this program description and type that in the chat. Okay, here you go. What do we not need in this? We got to cull it down. Are we typing? Is it a delay? Okay. When I read this, what I'm like, do we need to know Apex Learning? Is that a fact we need to know to participate in this program? Probably not. Utilization of online learning. Utilization is a big word, right? We need to know it's online, but we don't need to know all that. Comprehensive digital curriculum, not necessary. Automated progress reports sent to parents too. You know, I showed this example once and somebody said for these students, it might actually discourage them from taking part in the program if they know their parents are going to get an update. So there's a number of things. Yeah, help. Where do you start? Periods and end thoughts, they miss that. Yeah. So instead, if we do this, I'll let you read it. So what we've done is we've taken out all of that extra information, Apex Learning, automated progress reports, all that we can tell them at another time. For now, we're focusing on, we've got this program. That's our purpose. We want to let them know about this. And we've interjected two other things. We've interjected a sense of hope because there's freedom. And then we've interjected this idea that you're not alone. So we've taken out the unnecessary information and included some information that will actually persuade them to give us a call so that we can tell them the other stuff about the program. When it comes to information, leave out lots of details. If parents want to know more, they'll ask. We want to be able to give people the minimal basic information that brings them into the learning process and gives them what they need to participate in the world of education. Leave out unnecessary background information like Apex Learning. We can give them that at a later time if we really feel that's necessary. And leave out information you can give them at a later time or another communication. We don't want to overwhelm parents because we will lose them. Remember that when we are simplifying our communication, we're not dumbing it down. This is really important. The information we're conveying is as complex as ever. We're just conveying it in a way that is understandable. Everybody on this webinar today could understand rocket science. We could all be rocket scientists. I am sure of it. If somebody communicated it to us in a way that was conversational and approachable and simple. We should never underestimate our parents' abilities to participate in the learning process. The responsibility to communicate is on us. Your last tip, authorities say adopt a partnership tone. When it comes to tone in our communications, what I want you to be aware of is there's tones on both sides of the equation. There's emotion on both sides of the equation. There's emotion on the part of the person doing the communicating. How do they feel about families? How do they feel about what they're communicating? How are they doing today? And then there's emotion on the part of the person receiving the communication. What's going on in their life? How are they feeling? Have they gotten a good night's sleep, right? There's emotion on both sides of that equation. So when we're trying to communicate in a more partnership tone, we need to keep both of those things in mind. Tone starts with the person doing the communicating. It starts with you. How do you feel about the families you're communicating with? If you believe that they want the best for their children, and I've not met a parent or caregiver who doesn't, you believe they want the best for their children, that is going to come through in your tone. You're going to have that partnership tone that you really need. So it kind of starts with you. And it starts with how you feel about what you're communicating. It's much easier to make a positive phone call than a negative one, right? If you're making a phone call that perhaps you have to share some information that's tough to share, challenging to share, just be aware that that uncomfortableness might come through in your tone, and you can kind of check for that. And then how was your day? How do you feel in general? Are you doing your self-care? You know, if you're having a lousy day, that'll sneak its way into your tone, whether you're answering a phone call or sending an email. So just be aware of how you are feeling. If you're hangry, that may come through in your tone. If all heck is breaking loose back here and you got to answer the phone call and talk to a parent, that might sneak its way in. So just be aware of that. All right. Get your fingers ready and put on your parent hat. Come up with one word to describe the tone of these two examples of communication and write that word in the chat. Here's your first one. This is a Facebook post. What is the tone of this? And now that you'll start seeing $5 words and all the unnecessary information, but we're talking about tone here. And go ahead and drop it in the chat. What is the tone of this one? Formal. Yes, it's very formal and directive. So if we think about that idea, outside thoughts not really welcome. Thank you, Bev. So when we think about that idea of how does the person who wrote this really feel about families, they don't necessarily want them to come to the meeting, right? And that's clear in the tone. And then when you think about how that's received, as Bev said, you feel like you're not very welcomed. Okay, so we're gonna take this from formal to friendly. How about this one? How does this one feel? It's better, right? This one says to me, come on down. Everybody's welcome. So you would think about the person who wrote this feels about families. They're like, the more the merrier, right? And so then the person receiving the information is more likely to come. We're going to do one more example. So this is a communication that comes home on the first day of school. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's no one involved in the education process that doesn't have a sense of hope on that first day. And this is what parents receive in the packet that they get. How does this person feel about families? How do they feel? When I read this, I feel like they've been burned before. Like they want to make sure we know, right? When I read this, I think perhaps they should retire. And when I receive this information, I feel like I'm already in trouble. And it's the first day, and I'm the parent. So we're going to take this, we're just going to call this person our curmudgeon, and we're going to look at our rewrite. So we've taken out some of that $5 word. We've taken out the unnecessary information. From a family engagement standpoint, we've created a shared goal. We want your child to be safe, and we know you do too. And we've explained why we have rules and regulations, and then we've asked them to partner with us. So from a communication standpoint, we're actually bringing them into the process and engaging them. When it comes to tone, my biggest piece of advice is just breathe before responding and understand where you are emotionally. Always think about the receiver of the information and bring a fresh start to every interaction. So if you've had a challenging conversation with a parent or caregiver, give everyone a fresh start because you have no idea what's going on in people's lives. When it comes to writing, if you read your work back to yourself, you'll be able to sense the tone. Anybody walking by my office, I grab them in. I said, let me read this to you and tell me how you think it feels. So reading your stuff or having someone else read it are the most powerful things you can do. Be aware of cultural differences and tone. Always express respectfulness and thankfulness. And remember that your goal when it comes to school-home communication is not to be in charge, to win, or to be right. Your goal is to build relationships that result in strong partnerships and student success. So sometimes when we are partnering in relationships that really matter, We have to say we're sorry when we're not sorry, right? We have to do what we have to do in order to preserve the relationship. To check yourself, read your work out loud. You'll hear the acronyms, the clumsy language in your tone. Do a reading level check of the stuff you send home. We want to shoot for a 4th to 6th grade reading level, not just yours, but all of the learning at home activities that you send home to parents. And then ask parents to participate in your work. They'll tell you what works from a school home communication standpoint if you ask. Never forget that the responsibility for good communication really lies with us as educators, and that's because it's easier for us to push out than for parents and our community partners to overcome all the barriers we put in place to push in. And then remember that changing our communication practices is just the beginning, because the essence of communication is really listening. Okay, well, I want to leave you with this because it's funny. School home communication is everyone's responsibility. This is the parent janitor conference. He says your kid throws up a lot. All right. That was literally like speed dating, wasn't it? Between Deborah and me, and now we're queuing up Bev. So here is your resource. There's a lot more in here than I had time to cover, but if you want to get your phone and get the QR code and sign up for that, share it with your staff, and hopefully you'll find it helpful as you communicate with families. All right. Thank you. I'm going to stop my share. Right. Bev, you're up.
Well, I am so delighted to have the opportunity to have both Deborah and Patricia share. Oh my gosh, what awesome ladies, and information that they have shared with us today. My focus is going to be about empowering learning at home. So trying to introduce myself, I thought, what are some one words that might describe who I am and what I do? So that's where this bunch of words are. Glance at those words. I'll tell you some of the key information is to know that I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin now. I'm here because my children have all settled in this area and we moved to join them. I'm the author of a book called Menu for Building Family Partnerships. It reflects the wonderful work I had the opportunity to do working with families and with educators who valued working with families. And there's some information there about some of the products that I do. I do work with Vicki. Vicki came up with a brilliant idea that we could empower parents to work with their children at home by equipping them with resources, and that there would be a way to do solution packs that we could reach out to programs that once a month, they would always have an activity to work with their youngsters. More about those kinds of things at the end. Two key ideas
we don't see your screen yet, Beth.
Oh, you're not seeing. Thank you so much for saying something. Don, are you around? I have backup man here. It was looking good on my screen. Give me 1 second, folks. Thank you for your patience.
Where's the escape? There's the escape.
Oops, that was a problem. It was already on my screen.
Share and slideshow. And there you go.
Is there a picture now, guys? Vicki or Deborah?
Yes, there is.
Okay, then we're there are the words there I was saying would be on your screen. And there's my book, Menu for Building Family Partnerships. Okay, thank you for making me aware of this. This slide shares information about a formula that I began to use working with the families in the school district I was a parent involvement coordinator in. And I would tell them, we do as much as we can at school to help your child learn. And I know you're already doing things at home. So we started to use the slogan of school plus home equals learning. Successfully engaging families requires being an intentional attention given. And things that you need to give attention to are things like the time. Do you have the opportunity to connect with families? Is that built into your schedule, into the work that you're doing? Are there some funds that you are putting towards the work that needs to be done? Do you offer some kind of training, some kind of direction so that families know what they can be doing to impact their students' learning at home? The kinds of things Deborah mentioned in her presentation about giving them practical ideas and insights as to why that was important. A second thing that I've used for a long time is the word parent or partner. One time I was trying to explain to someone what was the difference between someone who was a parent or someone who was a partner. And I can use the letters in the word parent to spell the word partner until I get to that very last letter R. You are the difference. So what is the difference between a parent and a partner? It's how you are inviting them, how you are welcoming them, how you are equipping them, and how you are intentionally giving attention to their partnership with you. I did a couple of research kinds of things, but I set upon doing a research project to measure what strategies are the most effective if we're trying to engage families. By this point, I had already started a business and I said, okay, I want to know more about what we can do with families. So I worked with a school district. We had 83 families that worked with the research project over a 10-week period beginning in September going through November. They had 10 weeks of intervention activities. There were 11 classrooms who participated, both from a Head Start program and also from the public pre-K program in our district. We did pre and post tests with both families and staff. Don't tell me parents don't do things, because 93 of the families that enrolled in the program completed the project with us. In other words, we lost one parent. We offered 3 intervention levels in the work we were doing. We gave suggestions. We gave suggestions with prompts, and then we also shared resources. In the pre-test, one of the things that families told us is that they reported that they were already involved. But when we asked them, how else would you like to be involved in your child's education? Of those that responded to the open-ended question, 35% said, any way possible, whatever the teacher recommends. So if we as educators want parents to be partners, are we giving them those nudges, those ideas, planting the opportunities for them to engage in learning? In the research project, we did 3 different levels of intervention: suggestions, suggestions with prompts, and what we called shared resources. We did 10 different themes. Each week was a different theme that we did. So one particular week was talking about opposites and directional words. And in that conversation, we asked the level 1 staff members to say to the parents that they wanted them to play a game of basically hide and seek, giving them clues to help find the object with directional words. So they gave them several examples. If they did not have that face-to-face opportunity with the family, we asked them to make a phone call to the family to make that connection. Level 2 got the same opportunity to do the hide and seek kind of game, but instead we put it in writing and we put it in a plastic bag, and we also gave them a foam shape that they could be the object that they would hide in various places in their room. At level 3, we shared with them one of the games that I had created. It worked on opposite directional words, and it had a book that went with it. Note, in all the work that we did, we always did it in both Spanish and English so that we had families that had both language needs addressed and involved. In our research afterwards, our post-test to the families, we said, how many total activities did you do with your child? And this was out of a possible 10, a different activity each of the 10 weeks. The ones that were given suggestions, we had a 6.4 rate of involvement. At level 2, we had 7.3. And when we shared the resources, we went up to 8.24. We then asked them how long you spent doing the activities. We asked them that at different times during the project so that we had an idea of what kind of time was being spent. But we had 13.94 minutes spent when we gave them a suggestion to do. But look at the number in the last column, the level 3 when we shared a resource. We went up to 22.88. This is another way to kind of look at that data, the level 1, level 2, and level 3. At level 1, 8 activities averaged more than 11 minutes of engagement time. When we got to level 2, we had 9 activities that averaged 13 minutes or more of engagement time. But when we got to level 3, all the activities averaged more than 18 minutes of engagement time. Wouldn't you just love to have every family spend 18 minutes doing some kind of meaningful engagement with their youngster? I also like to share what were the favorite kinds of things that people did. At level 1, it was a home activity page that we gave them where we gave them body parts, and we told them to find the body part on their child's body and have the child find it, and also to point out where it was on the illustration. Note the 2 colors on that page because we did it in both English and Spanish. The level 2, they loved this little monkeys jumping on the bed activity. We gave them craft sticks, we gave them die-cut monkeys, and we let them glue them together. It could be done as a make and take, but the important part was we sent the words home so that our families knew what the words were to this finger play if it's something they weren't familiar with. And many of our international families did not have the exposure to the nursery rhymes and activities and songs that we often think many families already know. At the level 3 level, what families really enjoyed the most and gave the most favorable reviews of was a brown bag with a piece of paper taped to the outside, giving them some suggestions of color activities to do, and a collection of materials from construction paper to colored dots, to glue, to crayons, to a little mini book. They spent more time and spoke most highly of that activity. This slide shows you what the teachers thought about the engagement process. We asked the teachers how involved were parents based upon a scale of 1 not at all to 5 very interested. The parents said that at level 1, where we gave the suggestions, is that parents were neutral, not one way stronger or the other. At level 2, they said they were somewhat involved, but they felt that those that received the resources to use were very interested. So if the difference is between telling a parent something to do and giving them a resource to make that happen, you can see the significant difference that there is even between the teacher's perception and what reality proved. The effectiveness of activities in engaging families by level, they felt that the level 1 activities were only 30% effective, but that those that were shared resources were 70%. So what is the recommendation I give? That you should think about all 3 levels of engagement, that programs should offer suggestions. They should offer suggestions and give prompts, but they should also share resources to families to work with. So as I continue to share things with our families in the program, we found that not only should we give them an activity, but that we should share with the families knowledge about what the student is learning, skill insights so they know what the student should be working on, and resources that the family could then utilize. So that activity there is called my Going on a Bear Hunt game. And what was really cool about it was this was an idea that didn't come from me. It came from the families. A parent came to the classroom and said, boy, the kids really like that Going on a Bear Hunt book. Why don't we have a game about that? So what were we trying to teach? We were trying to reinforce counting skills, obviously, but there's also a nice list of things the bear does going on their hunt. And to be able to repeat those things quickly as the bear has to quickly return back home, it was a good memory kind of activity. So we tell parents that in the instructions. But then we also have an area called More Fun Things to Do. Just like Deborah said, that play is important and we need to encourage parents to play and have experiences with their children. When we gave them the activity, yes, there was something they could engage in and doing with their children, but there also were many other things they could do to extend that learning even further. So this one, for example, one of the activities under the More Fun Things to Do says, take a stuffed animal on a trip. This could be around your neighborhood or around your home. Talk about the places you visit, what happens in each of the rooms or places you visit. So just planting an idea to take that family deeper into doing the activity. The next one says, get out a towel and your stuffed animal friend. Have your child hold 2 corners of the towel while you hold the other 2. Stretch the towel open, bounce bear up and down on your towel. So just giving them activities that they can experience with their youngster. How do you set up a library or a lending kind of program? Well, families benefit from any types of materials that you share. It could be something as simple as putting them in some kind of a tote. It could be a shelf that you convert. It could be a whole wall or part of a room that you would be utilizing in order to share materials with families. The teacher on the top row to the right, she's demonstrating to you how she used a sign-in board. She didn't do any of the check-in and check-out. Her families did all of that on their own as they borrowed materials and came to claim their student from the classroom. So this is another example about reaching out and giving families ideas and information. Every game that I created and every kit I sent home from the school always had a book with it. If you can pair those together, it's absolutely much deeper learning involved. But again, make sure that there's hints as to tell them what the skill is that their student is doing and what they should be aware of and should be looking for. Make sure that they know about other ways to enrich, and then also turn it back to them and say, how is your student doing? So your student, in answering the learning progress questions for this one, the parent is going to be asked, which letters do they seem to know and which need practice? Does your child see letters as parts of words as they look at the words in the book? So we're just giving them extra prompts and enrichment ideas. These ideas don't have to be costly things that you create. For example, if any of you are members of NAEYC, the National Association of the Education of Young Children, they have an option to print off something that they call messages in a backpack. So you print off the sheet and have instructions for how to share those with families. Another beautiful resource, and by the way, I have a sheet of handouts for my portion of this, and Vicki will share those with you after our presentation today so that you can find these addresses that I have on there that you can reference as well. And we will also make sure that you have information to reach out to both Deborah and Patricia. So this is another sheet that I really like. This is from Illinois, and I didn't get a chance to see where everybody was from today, but you don't have to be from Illinois to use these. It's just if you were in Illinois, you would get copies printed for free. So what you'll have to do is print them off, but a wonderful, awesome collection, pages and pages of different themes, of different topics, of different learning skills that you can share to families to help them to enrich learning. And again, they offer them in many different languages, and that's shown on the lower left of this particular slide. They're really awesomely colored and have illustrations to be very appealing to families and written at a very lovely level. I think Patricia would appreciate them at the level that they're shared. Another one is from Harvard. And this is a resource that starts with children 6 months of age and goes all the way up to 13 to 17-year-olds. Very often we don't find materials for older grade levels or middle school. So that's what's really nice about the resources that they share. All I can say is please, please check them out. And then I also ask programs to make sure that they sell their programs. Make sure that if you have pictures posted in your center, that you put captions with them so that families understand what they're looking at. So 2 youngsters playing in the tires in the playground, but we're telling them to that their child is exploring in this play experience, but also that there are new words to talk about, like investigate and cooperate. This is a thing from the Flamboyant Foundation. And again, this is on the slide, the handout that you will receive, what's on the lower left of the slide. So you can find this organization. But what I really like about the work that the Flamboyant people have done is that they've helped to figure out in strategies of student learning, what are low impact activities and what are high impact opportunities. So celebrations, fundraisers, potlucks, performances, and showcases are all on the left. Are those things good for us to do for families? Absolutely. Absolutely are great things, but understand that not every parent is going to participate in the fundraiser or feel comfortable bringing a dish to a potluck. So they could be great opportunities to be involved and to get connected with the school, but we're really talking about parents as partners in the learning outcomes. So look at the totally opposite end of the chart, the areas that are kind of in a gold color. So goal setting talks, regular personalized communication, positive phone calls home, classroom observations, weekly data sharing folders, home visits, modeling of learning, and supporting strategies. So think about the things that you do offer and decide, are they low impact or is there a real boost to learning because of the activities that you're doing? And strive to make sure you do as many of those boosts as you can. When families would come to our program, we would often send them home with a book. We didn't wait till the end of the program and say, oh, here's a book you can take home. We passed it out at the beginning of the meeting, and we would do an activity with the book just so families had a chance to immerse themselves in the book, to look at the book, and to maybe pick up some ideas. So one idea is that if one of the things we can do to help children learn, especially at our younger year level, is to make sure that they are getting lots of word knowledge, growth, and learning. So books, books, books. So as parents receive their books, I would say, turn to any page in the book you want to turn to. And then I'd say, find something in a picture or a word on that page that you know you have not said today. So looking at my picture from my book called Critters at the zoo page, I can tell you I did not say today the word orangutan. I'm absolutely positive. I didn't really say any of the words on this page today. So what you then do is show the child that that's an orangutan if they don't know what an orangutan is, and you talk about an orangutan, and then you ask them to find a picture. And you label things until they get tired of that page, and you turn the page and do the things in the next thing. But you're finding a word on the page that you've not used, and then you're getting the student to talk about that. Or maybe you do have an experience having seen an orangutan at a zoo, and you can bring back the idea of having had that experience with the children. Support language learners and make sure that anybody who has a second language, that you are sharing books that also have their language, whether that's taking a gifted parent in your program who also speaks that language and having them write in words. I've also used labels to be able to add words for families that have diverse languages. Set up show and tell stations. If you're working on tying shoelaces, then make sure you show families how you do it. What's the terminology that you use? Do you talk about rabbit ears? Do you talk about going around and going through? So share what that terminology might be. One of our newest pieces that Vicki and I have put together is a book about drawing and writing. So this is blank pages where programs will pick out words or ideas that they want families to write about and invite them to be writers. But more importantly, you see on the bottom of this slide of a youngster holding a pencil. Do you know so many of the families didn't know how to help their child move from holding the pencil in their fist to holding it the correct way that they would have the opportunity to make letters more accurately. So make sure that you are constantly sharing to families what their role is, how they can help, and creating opportunities for that to happen. These are some slides that show you some of the products that Vicki and I have developed. We are delighted that you have taken your time to be with us today. And I know Patricia and Deborah will be happy to answer questions as well. If before you click out, if you have any questions at all that we can answer, I would greatly appreciate you sharing those things in the chat. And we will share with you other opportunities in the future for free webinars that we offer. Thank you so much for your time.